Hi, everybody.
Hi, how is everyone?
Hi, Councilman Reese. Hey, Diane.
Good evening, Councilman Reese.
Hello there. I'll change my name here. I'll be having dinner for a bit, so I'm going to have my camera off so you don't see me eating.
Okay.
I'll have my microphone off so you don't hear me eating, but I will be listening to you and watching you and ready to chime in if and when necessary.
Well, roll call will be shortly, so.
Awesome. I'll be ready.
We have 1 minute. Good evening, Mr. Johnson.
Good evening. Good evening. Hope everybody's doing well.
Yes.
Good.
Hello, Anthony.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, I guess.
Mr. Scott, do you have a presentation?
I do.
I will let you share it yourself. You should be able to do it without any problems.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
All right, thank you. It's now 6 o'clock.
Great, thank you. Hi, this is Diane Katati, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all this evening and call to order the meeting of the Affordable Housing Implementation Committee on Thursday, September 2nd. And I hope you all had a good summer. Welcome back, and we'll go straight to roll call with Juliet.
Stella Adams. Lavon Barnes. Laura Beatty. Diane Katati.
Here.
Lucia Constantine. S. Nicole Diggs asked for an excused absence. Tiffany Elder.
Here.
I should get one and I couldn't get.
Tammy Farrell. Courtney James.
Here.
Mr. Jarvis Martin. Rita Aura McDaniel.
Here.
John Parker.
Here.
Venus Sanders.
Here.
Timothy Stallman asked for an excused absence. Angela D. Vic Lewis.
Here.
Thank you. That concludes roll call.
Thank you, Juliet. The first thing we'll do now is just review the agenda and ground rules. So tonight we will approve the minutes of the last meeting. We'll have a housing bond update from the Community Development Department staff. I believe people from Moss and Ross or French West Vaughan will be with us later to give us an update on the Forever Home website. The MWBE contracting firm is not going to be able to join us this evening. So, that's already been removed from this agenda, but those of you that saw an earlier one may have noticed that they'll be joining us next month. Then we'll have a property update from the Durham Housing Authority, time for discussion, time for public comments, and then wrap up. Are there any additions or suggested amendments to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, I'll go to ground rules, and all the committee members received these. Oh, here they are, but you also received them in your packet. So they are to show respect for others and opinions, presume goodwill, be fully present. We'll have one speaker at a time for our virtual calls, and only the speaker will be unmuted to help eliminate background noise. And please, all participants will remain muted until called upon. Committee members can raise their hand to speak. Comments in the chat will be reviewed and addressed as feasible between meetings. It's really hard to pay any attention to the chat in the middle of a meeting. Let's see, what else? And then we ask that you please use specific examples in your remarks and please try to enjoy the process. So next up is Tiffany with approval of the minutes.
Hopefully everyone has had a chance to review the minutes. Are there any modifications requested to our June meeting minutes? All right, do we have a motion to approve and accept the minutes as written?
I can move to accept the minutes.
I second. Angel.
Thank you. All in favor? Say aye.
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 All right, minutes are approved.
Great. Thanks, Tiffany. Okay, next up is a housing bond update from Community Development Department staff. Reginald, is that you?
Yes, that's me. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. I hope everybody's doing well. I have a short presentation this afternoon, this evening. One of the things, I hope everybody had a good summer, and wanted to share some work that has been ongoing and provide an update. One of the things that was asked at the last meeting was that I share an update on where we are financially with the bond, and so I'll be doing that. And then two other items that I'll mention. There's been a request for me to talk about eviction diversion and the Durham Emergency Rental Assistance Program, ERAP program. So it's not quite in forever home, but since it's in our department's portfolio of work, I'm glad to share the information I do have. And so that's how we proceed. Next slide. So again, I'll give an update on the projects under Forever Home Durham, talk about eviction diversion, and then talk about Durham Emergency Rental Assistance, ERAP. Next slide. So before I go into this slide, one of the things I want to share with you, I think it was Ms. Adams had asked for to be sure to provide a financial update. This is not the one that you will have ongoing, but this is sort of a thumbnail sketch. So our budget office and our finance department, as well as community development, are still working through how do we do all of the accounting for the bond referendum those funds. Technically, we have not spent any bond money because we have not gone to the bond market to get the bonds. The bond funds. We're actually spending city money. But what we will do is once we go to the market, the finance department makes a decision to go to the bond market, they will actually get the bond dollars, and then we will do what we call journal entries back. So how the bond itself will work was at a total of $95 million, and at least our past budget finance director said it's probably going to go to the bond market twice, do half and half at one time. So that means that roughly $45 million, he'll go, because it's expensive to go to the bond market, and that's a cost there. So he'll go in at one time and do half, and then do another half later. So in the meantime, it's probably gonna get up to about that amount of money, $45 million, before he or she makes a decision to go to the bond market. So really what we're doing now, we're actually spending local dollars, but we'll basically reimburse ourselves when that occurs. With that said, there are some projects that are ongoing that we have committed bond dollars to. But remember, as they progress, we will only be spending local dollars until we go to the bond market. Most of these projects will be covered with the Housing Authority because those are the projects that are ongoing. But we have J.J. Henderson with new construction, which is the Housing Authority and Laurel Street Residential. is their developer, total funding of $3 million. The affordable housing bond is just over $1 million will be allocated to that, committed to that. Elizabeth Street, another project with Durham Housing Authority, another Laurel Street Residential is the developer, and the total city funding is $2.5 million. And that'll be all with affordable housing bond. And remember, one of the things with as it relates to the housing authority and most of our work, we're providing the gap financing. So this is not the total project. Total project, when Mr. Scott comes up, will be way more than the amount of money, but we're making basically a contribution to that to fill a gap. And that's what the funding that we have is all about. So I just wanted to make sure to clarify that. One of the projects that the city is working through with Farrington Road apartments, that'll be Laurel Street Residential also. That's basically $3.7 million in city funding, and all of that are coming out of the affordable housing bond. Then there's a project on Duke Street, we call it Brian's Place with CASA, 2.1 million, and all of that will come, well, almost 2.2, all of that will come out of the affordable housing bond. And then a project on Ross Road, some partners that partnered apartments that are being refurbished, renovated, $6 million in city funding, and $2.6 million of that will be an affordable housing bond. And then Fitz Powell, which is a apartment complex on Cook Road, the developer is Acura, and the amount of money will be $356,000, and all of that will come out of the affordable housing bond. So we're a total of 17, just under $18 million in total city funding for the affordable housing bond is almost 12.5 million. I think that none of these projects are actually, they're going, well, we just had groundbreaking on J.J. Henderson, but we can talk about that when Mr. Scott comes up. He can provide additional information. So that's where we are with the affordable housing bond, which is one of the questions that was asked at the last meeting. Next slide. So this next slide is, I'm not going to go through this slide because it incorporates all of the projects that are in Forever Home. And this is mainly for your record. So you'll see as of today what are the different projects that are going through, including the ones I just talked about that come under Forever Home. Durham includes city funding, whether it's bond, affordable housing bond or not. So you'll have that. Next slide. So I'm going to shift gears and go to the Durham Emergency Rental Assistance Program, the ERAP. So this is the funds that the city and the county have received from the U.S. Department of the Treasury, federal government, for funds to help persons to pay rent. So the city received the allocation and the county government also received the allocation. City received initially $8.4 million. Then we received another allocation of $6.6 million. And then the county, Durham County, initially received $1.1 million, and then the second allocation of just under $1 million. Next slide. So one of the things that we at the city did, we decided that it would be good for us to partner with the county and through County Department of Social Services, particularly since they have the infrastructure already to operate programs like this, and the city does not have the infrastructure. Infrastructure meaning we have people, we don't have people that can service people and meet them needs and take applications and those sort of things, because that's not what we evaluate applications, because that's not what we at the city do. So we partner with the county, and we actually entered into an interlocal agreement with the county for $8.5 million in March of this year. So Durham Social Services can administer the rental and utility assistance to tenants residing in the city. This allows the city and the county to operate a single program in the city and the county. DSS operates for the city as well as the county. Next slide. One of the things that we thought was very helpful for ERAP is that we knew that there would be challenges with persons in terms of applications for various reasons. And so we engaged some community partners with the administrative funds and some local dollars that the city has as part of the ERAP. So we contracted with 5 community partners to provide application assistance and support to reach high barrier tenants. Each contract was in the amount of about $45,000 from services from April until December of this year. Basically, while the application is online, electronic, you can do it on your phone. Some persons don't have technology or don't have language barriers or have other maybe cultural barriers, and going to one of these organizations can help do that, and they can actually, you can go to their offices or engage a person to actually help you with the application. And so we thought that that would be helpful, and it's been helpful as we go through this process. I think I need to go to a slide before this one, because this is, so I think go back. Go to the slide that says applications and disbursement amount. Should be the next slide. There we go, bingo. All right, so in terms of applications and disbursements, as of August 27th, a total of 6,000 applications were received and $5.3 million were paid out in rental assistance from city and county funds. Just so everyone will know, a complex reporting is required for grantees like the city of Durham and the county in Durham County to keep the U.S. Treasury abreast of the locality's spending and programming. And the national to local level program data is accessible, and this is a link. And so when you have this presentation, you can click on the link is in red and go to the national website. Next slide. Madam Chair, I see a question raised. I don't know which topic, because I did change topics, but I can entertain that question.
Okay, it's Rita. Would you prefer to wait till the end of the presentation or now?
I only have a few more slides, so we can wait. Okay, so I'm gonna shift gears to the Durham's Eviction Diversion Program. This is a partnership that the city has with Legal Aid of North Carolina. This was also a one of the requests that came in for some additional information, and I'll be glad to share with the group. Legal Aid of North Carolina is contracted with the city of Durham to provide legal assistance to tenants facing evictions and administer a successful program in Durham since 2019. The council approved a 3-year contract with Legal Aid in amount of $1.5 million in dedicated housing funds. The term of contract starts January 1 of this year and ends December 31st of 2023. Next slide. The eviction diversion resources that we provide to Legal Aid. This grant funds 5 attorneys, 2 paralegal positions, one of approximately 3/4 community resources coordinator salary, including fringe benefits, and $50,000 in indirect costs to support low-income households facing eviction in Durham. This is the work that they do. For FY21, we allocated $500,000. For FY22 is $515,000. And FY 2023 is $530,000. The project budget increases by 3% each year of the grant. Next slide. Summary of Legal Aid's eviction diversion activities up until May of this year. Since then, they've been quite swamped, and we've been a little delayed in getting the reports from them. But the number of new cases closed as of May 2021 was 296. Number of pending cases working at the start of the month, a total of have a pool of 143. 843. The number of closed cases with no eviction judgment, 246. And the percentage of cases closed that preserved tenancy are just under 81%. Next slide. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation. I'll be open to any questions.
Thank you, Reginald. I know we have a question from Rita. Juliet, can you unmute her, please?
I think she can, there she
Hi.
is, she's ready.
Good evening. I just have a question. I know we're talking a lot about ERAP, the money that's spent on that, but how much of the bond money is spent on the rapid housing?
So you went out at the end, but I think the question that I heard is how much of the bond money is spent on rapid rehousing?
Yes.
Okay, so none of the bond money is on rapid rehousing. Remember, bond money can only be used for basically things that are bricks and mortar. Rapid rehousing is a service.
Okay.
So that's number one. Two, if you look at the former presentations where I broke out what the spending, there is a homelessness component, and rapid rehousing is some of the local dollars is reflected in that. If you remember earlier presentations where the big one with the big chart on it, and I broke down all the categories, that's where rapid rehousing would be.
Could you tell me how much money has been, could you quote how much money has been spent on rapid rehousing since the COVID crisis has come up?
No, ma'am. Unfortunately, my brain is not that good for me to carry that kind of numbers in my head, but I'll be glad to have the staff to work on that and provide that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reginald. There's a question from John in the chat, which is, what is the current trend with eviction diversion efforts since the end of the recent reporting time frame, June?
So my anecdotal evidence, because we don't have the documentation from them, but in talking with them, it has increased dramatically. I can't give you a number what dramatically means from them, but I was in a meeting and legal aid was there today, and they were talking about it has increased, which is one of the reasons why I understand we haven't gotten our reports like we need, because they've been very busy. But I can share anecdotally.
And can you say anything more about, you shared the dollars that have been paid out. Have all 6,000 applications been processed, or are many still pending?
There are some still pending. I would rather give you the number, because I need to get that from the county. That's a county number. And so I want to make sure I report it accurately and not off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions from the committee? Lucia?
I was wondering if there are any programmatic changes to ERAP to help get the money out faster in light of the eviction moratorium and the new the new guidance from Treasury?
Yes, there are changes, and that's one of the challenges. There are changes almost daily.
Okay.
From the rules that are promulgated, and it's so we are making adjustments. The city and the county meet every week as we are telling the program made some significant adjustments in the application process in terms of what is required. Still looking at some more adjustments. One of those have to be, several of those have to be in concert with the rules that are promulgated from or come down from U.S. Treasury, which are coming down and are changing. Most of the programs and how we typically operate, actually, this is for DSS and definitely for the city of Durham and community development. Once programs or money is issued and the guidance is given, it does not change. And we operate accordingly to the rules that are come down. This is a program, we've had constant changes. And so we've had to adapt to those changes on the fly. And it has proven to be a challenge.
What are some of the changes under consideration now?
Well, one of the changes is, for example, self-attestation, where persons can self-attest to the bills that they owe, and that runs up against one of the challenges that we have, because a lot of times we have to provide documentation to say if I owe a bill for $600, well, okay, does the bill really exist? And so that's one of the challenges that we have to work through, but we're going to go through self-attestation for that. But that's one example.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the committee?
Rita has her hand up again.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. Please go ahead, Rita.
Thank you. So has anything been put in place for tenants that have passed through rent money in order to keep them from falling into this again? And being that there's so much uncertainty with the new Delta variants, how is that being played out, or has there been any steps or any kind of steps put into place?
So with this funding that we have, and when you apply to ERAP, there's a certain amount of back rent that you can qualify for. And it is balanced against how much money that you can get going forward. So, and I don't want to quote numbers. Karen Lotto might be on the on this call, and she can talk a little bit more about that. But there's a balance between if I have past due rent and the amount of their rent and how many months that I have in the past, as compared to how much I can get going forward. And that's one of the considerations. Karen, if you want to elaborate a little bit more.
Yes, sir. So just to clarify, under the current ERAP program that we're in right now, individuals can receive 12 months of rent and utility assistance, or rent or utility assistance. You don't have to do both. That it can start, essentially there's a start date with the emergency declaration in March of 2020. That's as far back as we can go. And then you can receive 12 months of total assistance. So that could be 9 months of past and 3 forward. It could be 3 past and 9 forward. It can be all go forward. With ERAP 2, that period of time is extended to 18 months. So essentially, if somebody receives 12 months of assistance with ERAP 1, they could get another 6 months of assistance with ERAP 2. All of this, of course, is subject to funding being available. At some point, we run out of money, but until we do, those are the rules that we operate under. There is no dollar cap on how much money a household can receive.
Thank you, Karen.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I'll go back to you. Reginald, do you want to introduce the Moss and Ross and French West Lawn people? Or
yes, actually I do. Actually, I'm going to let Karen introduce them.
Okay, great.
She serves as the project manager for this great team. She can introduce them.
Great.
Thank you. We are very pleased. So as you're aware, you've met the team before. We are working with a joint partnership of Moss plus Ross and French West Lawn. We sent you the link to the website that was launched in June. And we have Susan Ross from Moss plus Ross here, and Jenny, whose last name I'm going to butcher because I never use it, to Piluski. Okay.
You got it.
With French West Lawn, and I will turn it over to them. And I believe you're going to need to share a screen, correct? And Juliet, do they have authority to do that?
They should be able to do it.
Okay. Because what we've asked them to do is sort of walk through the website. There we go. Thank you.
I assume that means you see it. If I get a couple nodded heads there. Okay. So I'll start with some overview, and Susan, feel free to chime in at any time. Like Karen said, we launched this in June. I'll give you a couple of, I don't know if you've had a chance to spend time on the site. I will speak as though you have not, and hope to not leave anything out. I will preface it to say there will be updates coming very shortly. So what you're seeing on the site now is accurate up to June, and you will see that that's reflected on the site very clearly. We want to make sure it's always clear for any visitor how up to date the data portion of the site is, and we will be updating it quarterly at minimum as numbers increase and as there's progress to report. So this is the homepage you're looking at. Of course, a couple things to call out to sort of ground you in the site. You've, I believe, received or heard this information up to this point. We're doing all that we can to, and I continue to be so proud of Mayor Schul. He's getting the talking points in a lot on Forever Home Durham, and you're all familiar with that now, but our new name for the program, and this is to help spread awareness among those interested in paying attention of where the bond and city funding is going. Of course, as Reginald was talking about, this is gap funding, so this is contributing to projects that are of larger size, and it's not always forward-facing what those projects are. So we want to use this Forever Home Durham logo you see at the top left with the affordable, livable, inclusive tagline. We're trying to use that as much as we can, and in materials as much as we can, to start help with the education and awareness of which projects and programs are supported by the city of Durham and the bond money through Forever Home Durham. So calling that out. And then a couple things before I start clicking through to the site. It is a 5-page website with roughly 4 types of content. You see by 5 pages, we have the home page here, and you see your upper navigation with progress, impact, partners, and resources. And so those interior 4 pages, our goal was to keep it as simple as possible. We're trying not to recreate the wheel. There's a lot of information already either on the city website or in other partner websites, but this is intended to be a hub. So when we try to have everyone start here, because if we can start through this portal, we can direct people through to other other resources and other information, but this is the starting point. So this homepage here, one of the content types that I mentioned is, other than these overview, and I'll scroll back up to flip through on these buttons that are live and can take you to other portions of the site. But one of the content types is, of course, data. So we've worked to have this be as visual as possible and as simple as possible, focused on the goals that have been established from the start of communications about the bond and what the bond is meant to do. So those are reiterated here, and this just again to re-center you on the site. I'm here on the home page, and this is just about a halfway down scroll. So here's an overview of those goals. You're all familiar with them, but they will always stay present here on the website. When you scroll down further, we get to a progress chart, and this is where updates will continue to come quarterly. Again, you're seeing this, and you see it up here at the top, current data updated as of June. And in order to, and I believe we've gone over this with this committee before, but just in case it's a refresher, we have bucketed the progress here into 4 categories to help establish an understanding of the process that this has to go through. So what's completed is very different than what's under contract, what's in the pipeline, and what's remaining left to work on. And so I may have to refresh it, won't do this again, but every time someone comes to the site and they scroll down, this populates, right? Of course, you'll see that change over time as progress is made. If we scroll further down, this is where each goal then is charted and tracked on this bar graph. And again, visual simplified means of helping there be an understanding of how far we're going. And in each category. Further below is a timeline. Our intention is to keep this as comprehensive as possible, dating back to the start of, or when the bond was passed. How this shapes up over time, because of course this will live on and there will be lots of milestones charted and within this timeline, we'll look to make it digestible, again, an easy visual and easy to navigate. But this of course is updated as of June. We've got some great milestones as recently as last week with the groundbreaking at J.J. Henderson. So those types of things are what you'll see start to appear here on the timeline. Big milestones, major moments as the bond continues. So that is actually, let me call out one more thing before I flip through. Partners, here, there is a full page within the 4 interior pages that I spoke of before that will have a section, and I'll thumb through to it in just a minute on the partners, but this scrolling ticker here on the bottom of the home page will always remain as well in order to highlight the partnerships in place, making the success of the bond possible. And these are all clickable, so they can go out to the partner website. So I'll scroll back up here and click through on the progress page. It is where we are going to be featuring housing and support overview. Let me show you an example of what happens here, which is what I was speaking to as far as making this a hub, also clicking out where needed and where helpful. But right now, all of these buttons, if you click on, they just take you to a different part of the web page to help you get quickly to what information you may be looking for. So clicking through here to progress. Housing and support, that's how we have broken out what this interior page provides. And so up at the top here, we have listed housing and progress that's happening in that category. And then here at the bottom, and of course, this is where we can go out to partner organizations to be directed in the right, to the right location, but the support provided by these partners. And then further down, more information on which housing, the bricks and sticks of it. And right now, this does not do this, but this was for the first phase of launch. It will, we will get to this with future updates. These will click out to project websites where applicable, where more information can be found about where these projects exactly stand and more information about each. But right now, these are the highlights. And this is new as of this week that we are running into this problem. So we have a request out to our server to figure out why this is not loading correctly. And of course, that's well timed for me to be showing you all in this meeting, but so it goes. We are getting that updated, and hopefully it'll just be a matter of days before this populates correctly. But this shows a nice visual within the city where all of these projects and services can be located throughout the city. So I'll scroll back up, and I know sometimes navigating a website as you look on can feel quite motion heavy, so I apologize for that. The second interior page, impact. We are looking here to tell really great stories. We've got a couple in the works of residents, actually, which is the hardest story to tell. We will be featuring also stories from partners who can speak about the impact being made as a result of this bond. So for instance, ideally, we will have a story here that talks about perhaps J.J. Henderson and the funding and a lot of the, if anyone was able to listen to the remarks made last week, some of the comments made about the impact that the bond is having on the ability to actually embark on the great milestone there at J.J. Henderson. So this is where we're going to tell a lot of those real stories. They could be individuals, they may be partners, they may be individuals who work within the partner organizations who can speak, you know, in a real human way about the impact that this great program is having. So those will all be featured here.
Jenny, I'd like to add that some members of this committee may have some stories they'd like to suggest for this page. That would be really wonderful. People
Great.
or partners, or, you know, we're looking for them.
Thank you, Susan. Absolutely. Absolutely. And at the bottom here, stories and activities is what we're calling this. This is where we're going to pull in some external news. It could be, as you see here, some city life updates, actual source. If I clicked out, it would take you there. I won't do that, just not get too confusing. But where, you know, there's some positive news stories that happen here, we'll pull that in here. This is where you will see the update on the J.J. Henderson groundbreaking. We have a wonderful visual and a story written up that will go in this next quarterly update. So here's where you'll get more information from an impact and storytelling perspective. Third interior page, partners. It is as it sounds. This is where we have all of our partners featured. Again, I'll do this just for fun. You'd click out here and go to the Durham Housing Authority website. Same goes for all the partners. This is intended to help, again, explain who the partners are, how the city is contributing, what the services of these organizations provide within the community, and hopefully direct some people for how they can get you know, the help that they need and where they can turn to. So a lot of, you know, really great partners all listed here. And then the final page of the site, resources. We wanted to make sure that, you know, thinking about various audiences that come to this site, of course, some may be wanting, just community members wanting to understand what the status of the bond is. Some could be people looking for, you know, certainly assistance. And that's why the partners are listed, so they can go to the partners to get the assistance they might need. Of course, we know there might be contractors and developers coming to understand where the city is in listing requests for proposals, RFPs for potential jobs. So those will be populated here. And then we've got an FAQ section. There's a whole bunch of, this is quite dense, but of course, a whole bunch of knowledge and a lot of people, especially as you go through something like a bond, who don't quite understand how this process works, what some of the terms mean, and that sort of thing. And so that's where you can find all of this information in the FAQ section. Same for definition of terms. And that, I think, is all I have planned to discuss here. I haven't kept up with chat. I don't know if there are any questions for Susan or Reginald. Karen, if you have anything else to add, please do.
Thank you, Jenny. I assume you can see the chat, or do you want me to note there are just a couple comments and they're not questions?
Let me stop my share.
Essentially,
the nice comments. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. I'll take a look. Great. I couldn't while I was sharing, but right now. Thank you. Yep.
Well, thank you. Are there any comments from the committee? And I will note that Jarvis somehow is in the attendees list, different Zoom link, but Jarvis, if you, I guess you could maybe send a message in the chat and we could let you in. But are there, again, questions from the committee?
I wonder if it's possible, or it looks like the website's a really good skeleton. It's really got a lot of things that can be done with it. So it's off to a really good start. Many of the partner organizations have tremendous needs. You know, there's a number of Section 8 vouchers that aren't being used. There's a number of the waiting list at CASA is a couple thousand people. Of course, that's triangle wide, but I'm wondering if there's a way to kind of expand out a little bit so we can demonstrate in the community what the great needs are. And I'm not saying it should be done that way, just I know we want to tell a good story, but we also want to tell a story about what the needs are. Any direction that you have that's going with that?
I don't know if anybody else wants to speak to that. I think it's a very valid point, and I do think part of our, and Susan, you may want to expound on this before more, but of course you all know part of the big goal of the communications plan is to ensure everybody understands the reality of the need as it compares to what is being spent or can be spent now, and just how much or how little impact that's going to make over time. I think that certainly in the stories section that I had pulled up, that's from kind of the news section, almost stories and articles, I think where we start to tell some impact stories and feature really what the partners are doing and what can be done, I think that will shine through organically in many ways. But I think it's a great comment and something for us to continue to consider as well.
And the only other thing, I think it's great that we're showing the partner organizations, but many organizations have ways that the community can participate. CASA has their annual fundraiser September 23rd. And I realize that, it's got to stay generic and everything, but I just want to point out that if folks do go to the website, they want to check on the progress, they're probably already interested in the issues. So, that there are other things that can be done that the community could actually plug into the partner organizations as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great comment.
Really good point. We hadn't thought about that. I like it.
Any other comments or questions from the committee?
I was just going to say, to John's point, and I know you guys put in so much to this website, so putting in more probably is overwhelming, but the same way that you have the progress bar that gives all of the high level statistics, it might be interesting to have a similar bar that gives high level statistics of the reality that that we're faced here with. Just again, not delving too much into the details, but just so people can see what this reality actually is, because I do think that's important to understand.
It's a great comment, Courtney.
It seems like we haven't heard from Anthony yet, but the whole issue of the before and after, if you had a before shot of some of these apartments and an after shot on the two spectrums, the more we can make it visual for people, I think, because a lot of people are going to scroll through things, but we are making a big difference, and that's what we want to tell the story.
Yes, and we have good visuals coming with some of the impact stories that show just that. But I definitely agree.
Right. Any other
And I would like to see, I do. I just have a comment. I would like to see a report from the builders, like when there are delays, how far they've gotten on different projects. I think that would be helpful. It would enlighten the community to feel like things are progressing as far as where they're living, things where the bond money is being spent, and just stuff.
Okay, thank you, Rita. Any other comments before we move to the DHA presentation? Reginald, do you want to introduce Anthony or do anything else?
Yes, I do. The first thing that I would like to do, if you don't mind, is introduce Ms. Melva Henry. In my presentation, I didn't introduce her. She has the unenviable task of being the project manager for ERAP and Eviction Diversion. She has both of those, and they're coming together right around COVID in this time. And so she's working very, very hard, which we greatly appreciate. But I do want to recognize her and thank her for the work that she's doing. She prepared all of the information that I just shared, but I did not realize that she was in the meeting, and she had to do some work last night. And so I didn't expect her to be here tonight. But I just wanted to thank her and recognize Melva Henry. Thank you. And with that, I will also, Melva, did you want to say anything while you're here?
Not really, but thank you. I'm not here in official capacity. I was actually just listening and not watching the screen. So when I heard my name, that's when I picked up my phone. So thank you for saying my name to prompt me. But yes, it's a pleasure working. I'm a native of Durham, and this is very important. It's near and dear to my heart, and I'm doing as much as I possibly can. We all are, to make this process as fluid for our citizens and residents, I should say. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Melvin. Very much appreciate you. With that, I will introduce Mr. Anthony Scott, the President and CEO of Durham Housing Authority. Hopefully he will provide an update on what has transpired over the summer, and also some questions were raised. So I hope he has some answers for those that he can share, but he's had some good news. I know he has some good news. And so I'm looking forward to him sharing that on what has happened over the summer and the last few days. So Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Reginald, much appreciated. I have a short presentation as well. So allow me a few moments to get to the screen share. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
So as we did last time around in June, I gave a brief update on sort of some of the things that are going on within DHA operationally. So through the months of July and August, we have been hard at work at filling vacancies. That is actually coming along pretty well. Well, we have positions that have been vacant. We've used temps. So now we're actually in a position of we're filling those positions permanently. We've had some good candidates for that. We've also had some folks that have left us, which has provided us another opportunity as well. So that's going pretty well. On our work order front, I think we talked about, we have been trying to get a series of contractors to assist us in dealing with some of our work orders, backlog, and other repairs that we needed. We ended up having only one qualified bidder, and we were struggling with that because of the procurement process, but we went to HUD and asked for approval. We were finally given approval to bring on that contractor as a sole source contractor. And by the way, he is an MBE contractor who we've worked with over the last couple of years, so we know his work. And he has finally gotten started over the last few weeks, and we're seeing progress there. Uh-oh, I forgot to put the numbers in here for this. So forgive me on that next bullet. But our work orders have been cut in half. I believe we had around 1,400 at last month. Now we're down to a little over 600. So a big part of that is having that contractor on board, getting those permanent employees in place. Apologize for not having those numbers included in this particular presentation. And then the last thing I'll speak on is our work order call line. We have been moving to a process so that we could better track our work orders. We have heard complaints from residents that work orders are being called in, either they couldn't get through or they've gotten through, but there would be no record of those. And so we're moving to a process where we have one number that people can call, and that is a third-party company that will handle those work orders. And those work orders that they receive will be directly inputted into our existing system. The challenge has been is getting the connection between our software program and this particular vendor, which we've been working on for the last several weeks. We're very close now. We suspect by, I'm going to say now October, we'll have this finally resolved and put in place. There were issues with having them learn our software, having them being trained on it, and then also having something called a VPN, which will allow them to access our software in a secured manner. So we're working through all those internal issues with the vendor and the software company that we use. And that's the only thing that's holding us up with that. And so we'll be able to launch that in a way so that all our residents will be able to have a work order. They'll immediately get a work order number. It'll be documented, and we can cut down on those missed work orders, at least claims that we've had missed work orders. Next, I want to move on Oh, this is an old slide from April, ignore that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the rental assistance program that we're engaged in. And thanks to the previous speakers, you understand basically how the program works. This is what the numbers look like for us. We have almost 1,600 active leases throughout our various programs. Of that number, we had almost 700 people that were behind in their rent. That was to the tune of almost $940,000, or over $940,000. And because of that, we implemented something we called a fresh start. And that was an attempt at making sure that all of these 691 families would be able to have a fresh start, help them access the available rental assistance funding, as well as we've applied for some additional funding. As Karen spoke about, the amount of, well, not the amount, but the time frame in which residents are eligible for that funding is only a 12-month span. We're now in September, and if you were behind from the beginning of the pandemic till now, you're already missing out on 3 months worth of opportunity to get funding. So there's going to be a gap there with the available ERAP funds for people who have not been able to pay rent up to this point. So we know we have to work on outside sources to try to help families in getting that gap filled. And just as a reminder to everyone, the housing authority, no housing authorities across the country have the ability to forgive rent. That is not allowed. HUD has been very clear about that. And so we really are trying to work hard with our residents to make sure that they can access these funds. To do so, we brought on staff people on a temporary basis to work with our residents. We're doing outreach in terms of emails, phone calls. We found that those two methodologies have not been as successful. So over the last month or so, we have started doing direct door knocking and outreach to our families. So of the 692 families that were behind in a rent, 269 have actually begun the process of getting funds from the ERAP program. 135 of that 269 were assisted directly by DHA. The other 134 either applied for it on their own, or they used one of the other partners. Of the $940,000 that's owed, the 269 families represents $196,000 of what is owed. So that's about 21% of the total amount in total. So you can see there's been some progress. It's been slow, but we've also are happy to see that at least some of these families are actually taking full advantage of the program. We've been doing all kinds of outreach in terms of, Facebook and Twitter, and our website has information. We've mailed out information to each family directly. We've done that for the last 3 months that we've finally gotten staff on board. So in their monthly rent statement, there's a flyer that speaks about the Fresh Start program and how if they need assistance in applying, we have staff people that can help them. There are other organizations that are in partnership with the county that can help them, or they can apply directly themselves. Any way, shape, form, or fashion, if they may need assistance, we have a team of people that are there and working with them to provide it. And now I want to shift to our DHA Downtown and Neighborhood Plan, or Ddnp. You guys have seen this graphic lots and lots of times. And this is kind of where we are, starting with J.J. Henderson. You've heard already Director Johnson talk a little bit about our J.J. Henderson project. The rehab portion of this, which is the existing building, we are about 13% complete with the renovation work that's ongoing. We have fallen a little bit behind. There's two things that occurred. One, just some supply issues that they've had. But we also had another sort of tragic situation where the lead person on that project did pass away. And so they had to do a little regrouping to be able to replace that person on the contractor side. But they're back on track now and moving forward. We're still expecting them to complete their work by the end of next year. The NBE participation is at 21%, and it will be growing as more and more work goes on as well. And some of that really good news is that we closed on our Moorhead Seniors project, or the J.J. Henderson new construction, meaning that we are actually finally able to get going on this project. We had our official groundbreaking last week, Friday. Had a nice small turnout because of COVID. We restricted the number of people that actually attended. And then coming up this week, this next coming week, they're going to start the demolition of the auditorium space, which will be part of where this will be located. And our MBE participation is at 29%. We're very excited that this is our first new construction underway of the Ddnp. Coming up soon, we hope, is moving over to the Liberty Street side and Liberty and Main Street side. Again, this is the overall site plan that you have here. Top phase 1 is what we're expected to start on right away. That starts with the demolition of a phase of the first portion of the building. We'll be tearing down 36 units. And in place of those 36 units will be phase 1A and B that you see represented here. And to Director Johnson's point, the city support is about $2.5 million on this, but the overall cost of that first phase is $19 million. The interesting thing about this, we talked a little bit about in June, is that instead of going after a 9% tax credit application for for phase 2 or 3, we've actually retooled our process because of some changes that were made to the 4% program, and the fact that we could do a combined 2 and 3 phase instead of phase 2 and then the next year do phase 3. We were able to see savings by doing a 4% tax credit application instead of a 9% tax credit application. That's rare, but because of some of the changes in the program, it made that possible. One of the things to keep in mind with the North Carolina tax credit program is that there's kind of a sweet spot of about 80 units. You notice you never see more than 80 units that are attributable to a 9% tax credit program. So that means that you have to do a bunch of smaller projects. That's why you've seen so many different phases here rather than larger phases. The 4%, however, does not have the same, because it's not competitive, it doesn't have that same sort of sweet spot of being smaller. So you can combine 2 sites, get more bang for your buck because you're not doing two different loan processes, 2 different closing processes. So you do save some money there, but you also save money in terms of economies of scale because of the number of units that you can build at any given time. So that's why the 4% strategy made more sense than doing the traditional 9% strategy. So that phase will begin it says July 2021. All of that got pushed now because of ongoing issues with the tax credit program that's been impacted by COVID-19. So what has occurred is that a lot of the lenders, our lenders partners, the partners on this for us is Lowell Street Residential. They're lenders because of COVID and kind of a lot of the issues with prices rising and interest rate uncertainty. A lot of them kind of backed up a little bit and slowed down their processes. And things, when they get dragged on, it means that your completion date, which you have to complete these developments within a certain time frame by the end typically of the following year. So now there's concern by the lenders, if they start their work now, will they be able to complete the project by the end of a particular calendar year, in this case, 2022. So these are all things that have kept a lot of people very nervous about moving forward with 9% tax credit projects. The North Carolina Housing Finance Agency is well aware of this. This isn't a North Carolina problem. This is a tax credit problem nationally. That is that all tax credit programs have a placed in service date associated with them in order for the tax credits to really work. So they're expecting some guidance to come from the national scene, that is the federal scene, which allows these tax credits to work. But then there's also the ability to do some things at the state level. So there's been clear signals by the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency that they are going to make modifications and adjustments and allow projects to be able to extend their closing date, if you will. This has been part of what has slowed down the Elizabeth Street apartments in getting started. We initially expected this to happen back in July in terms of the construction and demo, but now our new dates are looking at sometime in this 4th quarter, being able to get started with the demolition and the construction of this particular site. And we hope that both the the demo and the construction work will happen then, and then we can get back on track. We're expecting the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency to make an announcement on their expected adjustments sometime in the next month. And again, our shared prosperity goals at 30%, that we are there with the expected vendors for this so far. And Commerce Street Apartments is part of that phase 2 and phase 3. We'll have more updates on that in the probably by next week to give you a better sense of what this is phase 2 and what phase 3 will look like. I believe, well, this talks a little bit about those major challenges. Again, I should mention that the construction pricing, which we were very worried about back in June, has finally stabilized and in fact has actually come down some now that the supply lines have begun to loosen up a bit. And I just recently talked about the lender concerns and hesitancy. So I believe that is pretty much my overall update on the Ddnp phase 1. Ddnp phase 2, which is the 3 remaining sites, the DHA office space, Forest Hill Heights, and Fayette Place. We released the RFP in June for that. We are expecting our proposals later this month on the 23rd. That's when they're due. And we are excited about the interest that we've seen thus far. We had a bidders conference, which is where anyone who's interested in the work, interested in putting a proposal, I should say, come to us. We answer any questions that they have, generally explain the RFP questions, et cetera. We had over 50 people on that call. Doesn't mean that we have 50 different developers. It just meant that we had 50 people, which is a really, really great sign. So we're excited about potential responses to our RFP for one or more of those particular sites. And I do believe that is, yes, that's my last slide.
Thank you, Anthony. I know
You're
John
welcome.
had put a question in the chat, and then we'll entertain questions from committee members. John, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, a million years ago, I did energy audits for the Durham Housing Authority, and I had the opportunity to go door to door and knock on doors and tell people how they could save energy in their units. So I know how getting that person-to-person interaction is so critical. And I'm wondering, how many, as these folks are going around, they're probably a real wealth of information that they know about, what's going on in these units and with the residents, and they're probably messengers as well. I'm just curious how many of what their experience may be, and I realize it's anecdotal, but do they have emails? Do they have the internet? What means of communication may exist other than having to knock on the door, which I think is a great thing to do.
Okay, I thought you were going to say you were willing to do some more volunteer work on that outreach, John. We are finding that some of the email addresses we have no longer work. We're finding that the biggest issue is the telephone numbers we have are not working, right? So that's why we shifted to knocking on doors and doing direct engagement. The other thing that actually has done is helped people understand a little bit more about what this is, because they've gotten the flyers, they've seen the information that we've sent out. And so what we're finding is that through that engaged conversation, we're able to get them then to go to that next step. So in terms of the types of access that's there, people have cell numbers, but they've just changed. The emails actually they are the things that have been really the best that people have responded to than phone calls, we understand. But again, some people don't have accurate emails. So part of what we do is each year we do recertifications. We have to verify people's income, et cetera. So we're making sure we're getting updated information in that process. And then obviously, as we're knocking on doors, they're doing the same thing. They're getting updated information. With respect to internet access, because so much of this can be done on cell phones, we're finding that people are essentially using their phones for their necessary and needed internet access. We are in a phenomenal partnership with the city in that we are providing free Wi-Fi to all of our family sites in the first round. We hope to expand it to all of our sites in the second round, but all of our family sites, That is expected to be completed before the end of this year. McDougal Terrace has been the first to actually get this wireless service. And so any resident at McDougal has free high-speed internet access right this moment. Cornwallis and Oxford Manor are next up. And so all of those family sites are going to be first. This was critically important, obviously, because of the people having to go to school at home and that sort of thing. And who knows where we might end up in another couple of weeks or a couple of months. But the city is working in partnership with Duke and DHA to get all of our households wired so that they will all have free high-speed wireless internet. So we're excited about that, but it's a ways in the making to actually come to be able to complete all of that.
It makes me wonder, Anthony, when folks are knocking on doors and somebody opens the door and invites you in and you have good news for them, they're usually happy to see you and don't want you to leave right away. As a former teacher, I used to do a little program called I Used to, But Now with my students to show how much they're improving. And this kind of ties back into the website, but as long as a person is there and is doing this and say, well, what did it used to be and how is it now? And can I quote you on that? Can we put that on the website? Can we get the word out that there's probably so many things that are going on that we need to let people know? And your person knocking on the doors is really like a gatekeeper for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great idea. And I think we'll try to incorporate some of that. We have gotten, like when we get information from residents, that actually is being logged and reported back up. Secondly, no one is going inside units because of COVID. So whatever interactions, it's going to be sort of on the door stoop, if you will. We're not having people go inside units right now.
Yeah.
But those are great points in terms of trying to get more of those anecdotal kinds of stories but in terms of concerns, issues, curiosity, that housing stability specialist team is actually engaging folks in that way. This has been a huge effort on our part. Whereas we thought, okay, we're knocking on the door, letting people know this is a way for you to be able to get caught up in your rent and avoid the threat of eviction. We thought we would get a lot of enthusiasm around that. We haven't seen it work as well as we might thought. We've had to actually increase the number of people that we're pulling together to actually go out and knock on doors. We initially had we're thinking a 3-member team. We then went to a 6-member team, but now we're going to actually have to expand it to probably another 3 to 5 more people, maybe even 6 more people, just to make sure that we have enough people that are getting out and being able to knock on the doors and engage the residents in the way they need to.
Great.
Thank you both. Any other questions? Oh, Levon, I see your hand up. Please go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Mr. Scott, I want to commend you for the work that you're doing. I'm definitely more impressed with what DHA is doing. I have 2 questions. One is the folks that you're needing to knock on doors. Are there any special qualifications that they need to have? Is that something that we can hire residents that work in that live in DHA? Can they be the ones to advocate and be able to explain to their fellow neighbors what's, all this good news? And the last question would be, is, the folks who are already experiencing this, the new renovations, I think I would employ the chair and the vice chair as well as staff to see whether or not we can get some residents to kind of speak on their experiences, good, bad, or ugly, about how they're doing, what their updates are. Do they feel like, this has been a good thing for them? I would love to hear from actual residents about their experiences with being displaced and then being put back into a newly renovated apartment or room.
Mm-hmm. So to your first question about who can do this, we've actually had quite a bit of turnover with our team. That was the other challenge we had. But we do have at least one resident that was hired. The challenge with this is that it's not just door knocking, but we're having to go through a series of things because, as Reginald had indicated, we're having to deal with a lot of sort of government bureaucratic stuff, right? So we have to have people that are able to navigate through that. It's a lot of data intensive things. So with the base level skill set, yes, we're hiring anyone who's eligible. We've advertised this, we put it out for our residents, and we're still continuing to hire folks. So we never have a restriction on anyone that we hire. We actually have several residents that work for DHA currently. And so sometimes when I hear that question, we say, well, we're not restricting who can apply for these jobs. And we certainly try to let people know that these jobs are available. We certainly we know the benefit of having residents. In fact, the one resident that we have on that team has been excellent. She has been phenomenal in just helping staff think through how to do things, how to say things, and just her natural enthusiasm in terms of her engagement has been, off the charts. So we know how valuable that is, and we are trying to get more and more of our residents to actually be applicants, and so we can actually, in fact, hire them.
And that's what I mean. I didn't mean no disrespect that y'all weren't doing that actively.
No, I understand.
But I think it would be a great moment for DHA as well as the city and the county that we actually are employing local residents to do work for other local residents, and giving them those opportunities to share that story, because I think that's the only way that authenticity is different when somebody is knocking on that door compared to somebody who has never really understood or experienced that and just is kind of just going with the flow. So that's the only reason why I suggested that.
No, it's an excellent point, and not to take away from that. The other thing is that some of the other folks that we have hired, like one person worked for Durham Public Schools and other things. So they have great familiarity with our communities in some respect. And again, to your point, that has been helpful in making sure that communication gap is lessened. On the second point about stories, that was something that the folks from French West Vaughn have also been asking for. We've been trying to get more and more of those because we want to see that on the website as well. And so we're continuing to look at that. As you said, good, bad, and ugly. We want to hear those stories because any range of those stories help us adjust to the better of how we do our programs. Just as we talked about several months ago when we had some hiccups at J.J. Henderson rehab towards the end of last year. Those are lessons for us that help us adjust as to how we do this. So all of these are kind of our first rounds, or the first new construction of our first rehab with people in place. So those become lessons learned so that we don't repeat those mistakes, or just that we can do a better job at whatever we're doing the next time around. So that feedback is real important for us.
Thank you again. Good suggestions. Any other questions from the committee? All right. Seeing none, I'll just close that portion out. Thank you again, Anthony, for presenting and sharing all that information. The next section is a brief opportunity for discussion among the committee. So this can be wide open about anything. But one thing I do want to say is we especially want to hear from you if there is information that you want to see or suggestions you have for these meetings. And thank you, Lucia, for raising the question so that we got to see more information on ERAP and eviction diversion numbers. So this is just an open time for the committee, and then we have another 10 minutes or so to hear from the public after that. So anybody have any burning issues or thoughts? Other than the suggestions already made. Okay. I don't want to cut this off early, but if there aren't any comments, let's go ahead and go to entertaining comments from the public. At one point, we had 14 or 15 attendees. It's dropped to 7. I do want to recognize that former Mayor Bill Bell has joined us tonight. Thank you. It's great to see your name, Bill, and know that you're there. So Juliet, remind me how they can comment. Do you let everyone in now and then they can sign up in the chat if they want to speak?
Yes, I can let all 7 of them in.
Okay. So if any of you are interested in speaking, just put a note in the chat and I'll call on you. Thanks.
They should be able to raise their hand as well.
Okay.
I think everybody's been allowed in.
I think I see everyone. I don't see any hands at this point. Does anyone in the public have any comment? Going once, going twice. Okay, I will turn the meeting over to Tiffany to close out then. Thank you again for joining us tonight.
Thank you to everyone for those presentations. And I know many of us are excited to see the updates that are coming on the website as well. So thank you for that, and to the Housing Authority and to city staff. Much appreciated. Our next meeting and closing will be October 7th. That meeting, we will see or have a chance to see a presentation from the MWBE contracting consultant. So look forward to that. We will also be discussing our 2022 schedule. So have any dates in mind that we need to discuss on that schedule. But that is it for closing this out. Thank you for attending, and we will see you next month on October 7th.
Great.
Good night, everyone. Have a safe holiday and be safe. Mask up.
Yeah.
Mr. Scott, send me your presentation, please.
Good night, everybody. That was a
Good night.
fantastic meeting. I really appreciate the information.